Chapter 1. The Great Paradox of Love and Desire. Imagine for a moment the silent vows we make to our partners today. We do not just ask them to share a home or build a life. We look into their eyes and we ask them for the impossible. We say, "Give me absolute security. Give me safety. Be my ultimate best friend, my trusted confidant, the anchor in my chaotic world. But also, give me danger. Give me mystery. Thrill me, surprise me, and take my breath away." We are asking one single human being to provide what an entire village used to provide. We want the comfort of the familiar and the electric jolt of the unknown, all wrapped in the exact same person. Think about a relationship that has successfully weathered the storms of time. You might be picturing your own, or one you have observed closely. Over the years, you build a life together. You learn the intimate, quiet rhythms of each other's days. You know exactly how they take their coffee, the slight shift in their tone of voice when they are quietly stressed, the exact way they move through the kitchen in the morning. You become a flawless, synchronized team. There is a deep, profound comfort in this. It is a sanctuary from a harsh, unpredictable world. When the world outside is chaotic, you have built a fortress of absolute certainty within your own walls. But then the sun goes down. The practical tasks of the day are finished. The emails are sent, the dishes are put away, the house is quiet. You lie in the dark side by side, and a quiet, uncomfortable realization settles into the space between you. The profound comfort has somehow smothered the spark. The profound knowing has erased the mystery. You love this person deeply, perhaps more than you ever have, yet the raw, hungry charge of desire feels like a ghost from a distant, forgotten past. And the most heartbreaking part of this common human experience is the guilt. You blame yourselves. You look at the ceiling and wonder if something is broken. You think the fading of the fire means the relationship is failing, or that you have fallen out of love, or that you chose the wrong person. But what if the exact opposite is true? What if the loss of wild desire is not a symptom of a broken relationship, but the natural, inevitable consequence of a highly successful, deeply secure one? This brings us to the greatest emotional paradox of our modern lives, the fundamental conflict between love and desire. Love and desire do not speak the same language. In fact, they operate on completely opposite principles. Love seeks to close the gap. It wants closeness, permanence, predictability, and safety. When you deeply love someone, your natural instinct is to eliminate the distance between you. You want to merge. You want to know everything about them, to map every corner of their mind so that you never have to fear losing them. Love builds a warm, well-lit room where nothing can hide and nothing can surprise you. Desire, on the other hand, is terrified of the well-lit room. Desire needs air. It needs space. It feeds on the unknown, on mystery, on the thrill of the chase, and the slight, intoxicating edge of uncertainty. Desire does not want to merge. It wants to reach across a gap. If there is no gap, there is absolutely nothing to reach for. Fire needs oxygen to burn. If you throw a heavy, comforting blanket of absolute predictability over a fire, you will extinguish it completely. You cannot deeply long for what you already possess in its entirety. When we relentlessly domesticate our relationships, we are usually just trying to banish fear. We want to know that when we wake up tomorrow, this person will still be there, unchanged and endlessly devoted. So we unconsciously shrink their world to fit our desperate need for safety. We strip away their wildness because wildness is inherently unpredictable. We turn them into a known quantity. But when you put a wild thing in a cage of absolute security, it loses its vitality. You can stare at it, you can keep it safe from harm, you can love it dearly, but it will no longer thrill you. The electricity is gone. Historically, humans never expected this much from romance. Marriage was an economic enterprise, a practical partnership about land, lineage, and physical survival. Passion was considered a fleeting bonus, a lucky accident, or it was sought in the shadows outside the marriage. Today, we have elevated romantic love to a religion. We demand that our partner reconcile two fundamental, warring human needs that have been at odds since the dawn of time. Our deep, primal need for safety, and our equally deep, primal need for adventure. Understanding this paradox is the crucial first step toward reclaiming the vitality that feels lost. We must aggressively stop viewing the ebb of passion as a failure of our love. Instead, we must recognize that the very safety we worked so hard and so lovingly to build is exactly what put the fire to sleep. The fire is not dead. It has not left the building. It is simply buried under the heavy, suffocating weight of total predictability. To reignite that flame, we do not necessarily need to love our partners more. We need to learn how to see them from a distance. We need to intentionally introduce a little bit of the unknown back into the fiercely known. We must come to terms with the fact that ultimate love does not have to mean ultimate suffocating transparency. Because when the lights are turned on too bright, leaving absolutely no shadows in the room, there is no place left to hide, no place left to discover, and no air left for desire to breathe. Chapter 2. The Intimacy Trap. We have been handed a cultural mandate, a golden rule of modern relationships that goes something like this. Communication is the ultimate cure. If there is a problem, talk about it. If there is a distance, bridge it with words. If the spark is fading, sit down, pour a cup of tea, and process your feelings until the root of the issue is unearthed. We have been taught that the healthiest couples are the ones who tell each other absolutely everything, hiding nothing, leaving no emotional stone unturned. We believe that if we can just achieve total, unvarnished transparency, we will reach the pinnacle of true intimacy. But there is a fatal flaw in this modern obsession with absolute closeness. We have accidentally built a trap. In our relentless pursuit of total emotional fusion, we are slowly suffocating the very desire we are desperately trying to revive. Imagine a deeply committed couple who pride themselves on their incredible communication. Perhaps this sounds like your own relationship, or the ideal you have always strived for. They do not keep secrets. They share their passwords, their exact daily schedules, and their deepest, most intricate insecurities. When a conflict arises, they do not let it simmer. They dissect it immediately. They sit on the edge of the bed for hours, unpacking their childhood triggers, explaining their emotional responses, and validating each other's pain. By the time the clock strikes midnight, they feel completely seen. They feel thoroughly understood. They are perfectly aligned, practically sharing a single mind. They lie down completely exhausted by their own emotional labor, feeling closer than ever. And yet the air between them in that bedroom is completely, undeniably dead. There is warmth, there is profound care, but there is zero erotic tension. They have talked the mystery out of existence. They have processed the relationship into a sterile, clinical state of perfect peace. This is the great paradox of modern intimacy. We have confused intimacy with merging. We believe that to be close to someone means to eliminate all boundaries between us, to melt into one indistinguishable unit where you and I dissolve entirely into we. But desire does not operate in a merged state. Desire requires an other. It requires a gap. It requires a bridge to cross. If two people have completely fused into a single entity, who is left to desire whom? You cannot long for something that you already possess in its entirety. You cannot reach for something that is already resting heavily in your hands. When we insist on knowing every single thought that passes through our partner's mind, we are not actually fostering love. We are trying to manage our own anxiety. We are terrified of the unknown. We are terrified that if our partner has a private inner world, they might drift away, or change, or realize they no longer need us. So, we demand absolute emotional nudity. We want to shine a blinding, surgical light into every corner of their psyche. But think about what happens when a room is lit by harsh, unforgiving fluorescent lights. Every flaw is visible. There are no shadows. There is no depth. There is absolutely nowhere to hide. The room might be safe, but it is entirely stripped of magic. Desire lives in the shadows. It lives in the spaces between us, in the slight mystery of the unsaid, in the realization that no matter how long you have known someone, there are still vast, uncharted territories within them that you will never completely own. Consider the feeling of watching your partner from a distance, perhaps at a crowded party where they do not know you are looking. You see them deep in conversation, laughing, entirely absorbed in a world that does not involve you at that moment. Suddenly, you feel a sharp, unmistakable pull of attraction. Why? Because in that brief moment, they are not your extension. They are not your co-pilot in managing the household calendar. They are a separate, autonomous, radiant individual. The gap between you has been temporarily restored, and the spark of desire effortlessly jumps across that space. To escape the intimacy trap, we must do something that feels incredibly counterintuitive, perhaps even frightening. We must stop trying to bridge every gap. We must learn to tolerate the anxiety of not knowing everything. We have to give our partners the gift of their own private mind. Not every passing mood needs to be interrogated. Not every silence is a problem waiting to be solved by relentless communication. Sometimes a silence is simply a space, a necessary breathing room for the individual soul. True, mature intimacy is not the absence of boundaries. It is the deep, respectful honoring of them. It is standing closely beside someone, looking at them, and realizing with a sense of awe that they are a completely separate universe. It is saying, I love you, I am here for you, but I do not own you, and I do not need to consume your every thought to feel secure. When we step back and allow our partners to be delightfully, mysteriously separate from us, we stop being emotional detectives and start becoming lovers again. We stop demanding that they be our everything, our therapist, our best friend, our diary, and we allow them to simply be our partner. By retreating just a few steps, by allowing the shadows to return to the room, we do not destroy the intimacy. We simply give the fire enough oxygen to finally burn bright again. Chapter 3. The Danger of Fairness in the Bedroom. Think for a moment about the greatest achievements of the modern relationship. We have fought hard over generations to build partnerships based on true equality. We want a peer. We want someone who meets us exactly halfway. We split the financial burdens, we negotiate who washes the dishes, we share the mental load of raising children and managing a household. We strive to create a perfectly balanced ecosystem where no one feels taken advantage of, where every voice is heard, and where fairness is the ultimate guiding principle. It is a beautiful, deeply moral evolution of love. It makes us better partners, better parents, and better people. But there is a quiet, uncomfortable secret hiding in the shadows of this beautiful equality, the exact same qualities that make us extraordinary co-managers of a life together. Our fairness, our carefulness, our endless negotiation, our strict adherence to democratic principles can be absolute poison to our erotic vitality. Imagine a couple who has mastered the modern, egalitarian life. They are practically co-CEOs of their existence. They communicate flawlessly about schedules. If one partner has a stressful week, the other automatically picks up the slack. They treat each other with profound, unwavering respect. Yet, when the doors are closed and they enter the bedroom, they bring this exact same democratic mindset with them. They are endlessly polite. They take turns. They constantly ask for permission. They are terrified of being too aggressive, too demanding, or too selfish. They prioritize the other person's comfort so highly that they completely lose touch with their own raw hunger. And as a result, their intimate life feels safe, respectful, and overwhelmingly polite. It feels exactly like a highly successful board meeting. This happens because we have fundamentally confused the rules of the living room with the rules of the bedroom. Society thrives on justice, fairness, and mutual consensus. But desire does not care about your spreadsheet. Desire does not care about fairness. In fact, desire is inherently politically incorrect. While our daytime lives require us to be balanced and diplomatic, our erotic minds are fueled by the exact opposite. Eroticism thrives on power dynamics, on tension, on the thrill of taking and the surrender of being taken. It feeds on elements that our polite, modern sensibilities often find deeply uncomfortable: selfishness, dominance, submission, and the primal urge to consume or be consumed. We spend our entire day holding up the sky. We are responsible employees, careful parents, considerate friends, and fair-minded citizens. We make hundreds of rational decisions. By the time night falls, the sheer weight of being a perfectly balanced, responsible adult is utterly exhausting. The person who is in charge all day, who makes all the heavy decisions, might harbor a desperate, unspoken craving to have absolutely all control taken away from them in the dark. they want to surrender completely. Conversely, the person who spends their day endlessly accommodating others, biting their tongue, and keeping the peace might have a hidden, fierce hunger to be unapologetically selfish, to command, and to take what they want without asking. Yet, we suppress these urges. We feel a deep sense of guilt when our fantasies do not align with our progressive values. We tell ourselves that wanting to be dominated or wanting to dominate is somehow a betrayal of our equal partnership. We think that treating our partner as an object of pure, ravenous lust, even for just an hour, is a violation of the deep respect we hold for them. So we sanitize our desires. We water down our passions until they are perfectly safe, perfectly equal, and perfectly dull. But here is the profound, liberating truth that can fundamentally change how you experience your partnership. The bedroom is the one place in the world where the rules of equality do not have to apply. In fact, it is the only place where you can safely play with power imbalances, precisely because your actual relationship is so completely secure. It is the strength of your daytime equality that allows for the wildness of your nighttime play. You can only truly let go and surrender when you have absolute trust in the person catching you. You can only safely explore the darker, more selfish edges of your desire when you know that, at your core, you are completely respected and deeply cherished. True intimacy is knowing the difference between the reality of your partnership and the theater of your desire. The theater requires a suspension of the everyday rules. It requires you to step out of your role as the responsible co-manager of the house, and to step into a completely different persona. You do not have to be fair. You do not have to be 50-50. You are allowed to be deeply, wonderfully selfish. You are allowed to want what you want without a negotiation. When we give ourselves permission to drop the heavy burden of being perfectly fair and completely polite, a massive rush of energy is released back into the relationship. We realize that we do not have to choose between a respectful partnership and a passionate one. We can be absolute egalitarians in the light of day and completely different creatures in the dark. But doing so requires us to let go of our relentless need to perform and to manage, a deeply ingrained habit that extends far beyond our desire to be fair and bleeds into our modern obsession with treating everything, even our bodies, like a project to be optimized. Chapter 4: The Productivity Myth and the Pressure to Perform. We live in an era that worships at the altar of efficiency. From the moment we wake up, we are obsessed with optimization. We track our sleep cycles with digital rings, we consume podcasts at double speed to maximize our commute, and we treat every waking hour as a resource to be heavily mined for progress. We are taught from a very early age that hard work equals success. If you want a promotion, you put in the hours. If you want a stronger body, you push through the pain at the gym. The formula is deeply ingrained in our modern psyche. Identify a goal, apply maximum effort, and achieve the desired result. This can-do work ethic is the engine of our modern world. It is incredibly effective for building careers, constructing homes, and managing complex lives. But a profound tragedy occurs when we take this exact same hyper-productive, goal-oriented mindset and drag it across the threshold of our bedrooms. Imagine a deeply ambitious, highly capable person. They spend their entire day crushing deadlines, managing crises, and ensuring that nothing falls through the cracks. They are the ultimate problem solver. When they realize that the spark in their relationship has dimmed, their instinct is not to surrender or to play. Their instinct is to treat the fading spark as just another project to be managed. They schedule a date night on the digital calendar with a rigid start and end time. They read 5 articles on how to improve intimacy. They set the mood with the exact right candles and the perfect playlist, executing the evening with the precision of a military operation. Yet, when the moment finally arrives, when they are lying next to the person they love, their mind is entirely elsewhere. They are hovering above their own body, acting as a critical spectator. They are running an internal checklist. Am I doing this right? Is my partner enjoying this? Are we taking too long? Are we hitting the required milestones to consider this a successful encounter? The intimacy has been entirely stripped of its soul and transformed into a performance review. They are working so incredibly hard at being passionate that they have completely forgotten how to actually feel anything at all. This is the productivity myth applied to human desire. and it is a guaranteed recipe for emotional exhaustion. In the realm of eroticism, the rules of the corporate world are completely inverted. The harder you work at it, the more elusive it becomes. You cannot muscle your way into feeling desire. You cannot put "be spontaneous and wild" on a to-do list and expect it to actually happen at 9:15 p.m. on a Thursday. When we approach our intimate lives with an agenda, we create massive, suffocating pressure. We turn our partners into evaluators and ourselves into performers. The bedroom stops being a sanctuary from the harsh demands of the world and becomes just another arena where we might fail. We begin to grade our encounters. We worry about frequency, comparing our private lives to statistics we read online, feeling a deep, quiet shame if we are not hitting the national average. We focus relentlessly on the ultimate physical outcome, treating the climax as a finish line that must be crossed efficiently rather than an experience to be savored. But true erotic vitality fundamentally requires the suspension of productivity. It requires something that our modern society finds deeply uncomfortable, almost sinful. It requires us to be completely and utterly useless for a little while. Think about the nature of play. When children play in the backyard, they do not have a 5-year strategic plan. They are not trying to achieve a return on their investment of time. They are completely absorbed in the present moment, building a fort or chasing a shadow, entirely for the sake of the joy it brings them right then and there. Play has no destination. Play is fundamentally about the journey. Desire is the adult version of play. It breathes the air of aimlessness. It requires us to step out of our hyper-vigilant, problem-solving minds and drop back down into the heavy, sensory reality of our physical bodies. When we let go of the need to perform, when we stop trying to achieve a successful night of intimacy, a profound shift happens. The heavy burden of expectation lifts from our shoulders. To reclaim this space, we must consciously build a wall between our working lives and our romantic lives. We have to look at our partners and agree to leave the manager, the organizer, and the achiever outside the door. We must grant ourselves the radical permission to have an experience without a goal. This means lingering in a touch without rushing to the next logical step. It means exploring the physical presence of the person you love without demanding a specific outcome. When we finally stop evaluating ourselves, when we stop treating our connection like a delicate machine that needs constant fixing and optimization, we discover a beautiful truth. The pressure dissolves, leaving behind a wide, open space. And it is only in that unburdened, beautifully unproductive space that the genuine, unforced spark of desire can safely ignite again. But letting go of that work ethic requires us to confront something even deeper, a quiet voice that tells us we do not actually deserve to simply enjoy ourselves without earning it first. Chapter 5. The Hidden Guilt of Pleasure. We like to think of ourselves as incredibly modern, liberated people. We live in an era where almost everything is openly discussed, where boundaries are constantly pushed, and where freedom of expression is celebrated as our highest ideal. We read progressive articles, we listen to open-minded podcasts, and we pride ourselves on having cast off the heavy, repressive shackles of the past. But if we pull back the curtain on our most private moments, a completely different reality emerges. Underneath our sophisticated modern surface, an ancient ghost continues to haunt our bedrooms. It is the ghost of inherited shame. From the time we are very young, long before anyone ever explicitly sits us down to talk about the mechanics of human intimacy, we absorb an incredibly powerful and entirely contradictory set of messages about our own bodies. We are handed two opposing scripts. The first script tells us that intimate physical connection is the ultimate, beautiful expression of true love. It is sacred, it is profound, and it is the highest form of emotional bonding between two human beings. But the second script, whispered in the shadows of our culture, our religions, and our family histories, tells a much darker story. It tells us that pure physical hunger is dirty. It warns us that raw lust is a base, dangerous animal instinct that must be strictly controlled, heavily monitored, and ultimately sanitized. We are taught that pleasure purely for the sake of pleasure is inherently selfish and deeply suspect. Think about the profound psychological burden this places on a person. We are asked to take these two warring ideas, that our desires are deeply beautiful but also fundamentally dirty, and somehow reconcile them in the dark with the person we love most in the world. Consider a deeply devoted couple who have shared a life for a decade. They have built an unbreakable foundation of trust. They have held each other through the heartbreaking loss of loved ones. They have navigated severe financial stress, and they have cleaned up after sick children in the middle of the night. They are not afraid of the messy, difficult realities of human existence. They know each other's souls completely. Yet imagine if one of them were to look the other in the eye on a random Tuesday evening and clearly, unapologetically articulate a raw, completely physical fantasy, a desire rooted not in deep emotional bonding, but purely in the pursuit of intense, selfish, bodily pleasure. In many of the most loving homes, a sudden, heavy, suffocating awkwardness would instantly crash into the room. A blush of deep embarrassment would spread. One partner might feel deeply exposed, the other might feel strangely offended. Why does asking for pure pleasure feel like committing a crime? Because, whether we realize it or not, most of us require an emotional alibi for our physical hunger. We have internalized the belief that in order to be a good person, our lust must be thoroughly justified by our love. We tell ourselves that as long as we are gazing deeply into each other's eyes, as long as our hearts are overflowing with pure romantic affection, then our physical intimacy is acceptable. We use the nobility of romance to wash away the perceived dirtiness of our desires, but true eroticism does not always wear a white dress. Eroticism is often messy, greedy, and beautifully impolite. It frequently involves a desire to temporarily objectify our partner, to consume them, and to abandon our refined manners. When we force our raw desires to constantly masquerade as pure, gentle, romantic love, we strip them of their power. We become so terrified of our own inner wildness that we carefully lock it away in a quiet hidden box, throwing away the key so that our partner will never see our unclean side. The tragic irony is that in our desperate attempt to protect our partner from our darkest, most unapologetic desires, we end up starving them of our most authentic passion. We protect the relationship by making it entirely passionless. We become so obsessed with being good partners that we completely forget how to be great lovers. To genuinely unlock our erotic vitality, we must undertake a profound act of unlearning. We have to look at the invisible backpack of guilt we have been carrying for our entire lives, open it up, and willingly leave it outside the bedroom door. We must recognize that the desire to experience sheer, unapologetic physical pleasure is not a betrayal of our love. It is an entirely separate, equally valid dimension of the human experience. You do not need to constantly legitimize your hunger with deep emotional dialogue. Within the profoundly safe, fiercely guarded container of a committed relationship, you are allowed to be deeply selfish for an hour. You are allowed to want what you want simply because it feels incredibly good, without needing a noble justification. When we finally forgive ourselves for our own desires, when we stop trying to scrub our fantasies clean to make them socially acceptable, something miraculous happens. The immense energy that we previously wasted on suppressing our guilt is suddenly released back into our bodies. We stop apologizing for our hunger, and in doing so, we give our partner the radical, breathtaking permission to stop apologizing for theirs. It is only when we embrace the slightly dangerous, unapologetic nature of pleasure that we can begin to understand exactly what sparks it, leading us to discover the unique, invisible blueprints that govern our deepest desires. Chapter 6. The Architecture of Arousal. We tend to think of human desire as a simple biological reflex. We are taught that if the physical conditions are right, if the lighting is soft and the mood is romantic, arousal should naturally follow, just as a knee automatically jerks when tapped with a small hammer. If it does not happen, we immediately assume that our bodies are broken or that our relationship is fundamentally flawed. But this deeply clinical, mechanical view of human passion could not be further from the truth. Arousal is not a simple reflex. It is a wildly complex, fiercely individual masterpiece of psychological engineering. Long before you ever understand what romance or intimacy is, your mind is quietly drawing up a highly specific, totally unique erotic blueprint. To understand this, you must look away from the physical body and turn your attention to the most powerful, mysterious, erotic organ you possess, your mind. Why is it that one person can be moved to the point of overwhelming desire by a gentle, whispered reassurance in a beautifully decorated bedroom, while another person feels absolutely nothing in that environment, yet feels an electric, undeniable rush in a dark, slightly uncomfortable hallway where they might be caught? The physical mechanics of their bodies are exactly the same. What is completely different is the invisible architecture of their arousal. This architecture is built from the raw materials of our earliest emotional experiences. It is constructed from the things we lacked, the things we feared, the things we secretly craved, and the things that were strictly forbidden to us as we were growing up. Consider the story of a person who grew up as the ultimate golden child in a highly demanding, very strict household. From a very young age, their survival and their worth were tied entirely to being good, being compliant, and following the rules perfectly. They learned to suppress any hint of rebellion. They got the best grades, they never spoke out of turn, and they carried the heavy, suffocating weight of their family's expectations with a quiet smile. Fast forward to their adulthood. They marry a wonderful, equally responsible person. They build a beautiful, peaceful, perfectly polite life together. But in the bedroom, this golden child feels absolutely nothing. They lie in the dark, surrounded by all the safety and love they could ever want, feeling an agonizing, profound numbness. They begin to believe they are simply incapable of passion. They carry an immense, silent shame, wondering why they cannot respond to the gentle, loving advances of their wonderful partner. But their lack of desire is not a malfunction. It is actually a perfectly logical outcome of their personal architecture. For their entire life, being good has been a cage. Being polite has been a heavy burden. Therefore, their deeply buried erotic blueprint does not crave more politeness. It does not crave gentle, predictable safety. What this person's psychological architecture requires to feel alive is the exact opposite of their daily existence. They need the thrill of transgression. They need to feel, even if just for a few moments in the dark, like they are breaking the rules. They need their partner to stop asking for permission and start taking command. They need to experience the forbidden, slightly dangerous sensation of being completely bad, because that is the only key that unlocks the heavy door of their lifelong, suffocating responsibility. When we do not understand our own architecture, we judge ourselves mercilessly. We look at our darkest fantasies, the desire to be completely overpowered, the desire to be ignored and then suddenly consumed, the desire to watch, the desire to hide, and we view them as ugly mutations. We try to force our desires into the socially acceptable, neatly packaged boxes of mainstream romance. We try to be turned on by what society tells us should turn us on, and when the lock does not turn, we simply give up, assuming the fire has died. But our hidden blueprints are not mutations. They are brilliant psychological balances. They are our mind's way of seeking equilibrium. The person who is utterly invisible in their daily life might have a blueprint that requires absolute worshipping attention to feel aroused. The person who is constantly smothered by the demands of others might need a dynamic of cold, beautiful distance. Our fantasies are the places where we go to heal, to rebel, and to temporarily experience the exact emotions that the rigid structures of our waking lives deny us. Understanding your own architecture changes absolutely everything. It removes the crippling weight of shame. When you finally realize that your specific turn-ons are not random, dirty accidents, but profound psychological needs designed to make you feel whole, you can stop fighting yourself. You can begin to gently map out your own hidden rooms and secret hallways. More importantly, it allows you to step toward your partner and hand them the key. It requires immense bravery to look at the person you love and say, "This is how my mind is built. This is the story I need to experience to feel completely alive with you." But when you do, you stop expecting your partner to magically guess the combination to a lock they cannot even see. You give them the blueprint. You invite them into your deepest psychological landscape. And in that shared vulnerability, you do not just revive your physical connection. You forge a level of profound, unbreakable trust that superficial romance could never possibly achieve. Chapter 7. The Parent Trap. There is a moment in the life of almost every family that goes completely unrecorded. It does not happen on the day the first child is born, amid the blinding joy and the hospital lights. It happens quietly, months or perhaps years later, usually in the dead of night. It is the moment two people look at each other across a dimly lit room surrounded by scattered toys, folded laundry, and the soft breathing of a sleeping child, and silently realize that the wild, autonomous lovers they used to be have entirely vanished. In their place stand two exhausted, highly efficient co-managers of a domestic enterprise. The couple has been quietly swallowed whole by the family. The arrival of a child is a profound miracle, but it is also an undeniable earthquake that fundamentally shatters the existing architecture of a relationship. Before children, a couple exists as a closed system. You are the center of each other's universe. Your time belongs to you, your bodies belong to you, and the physical space of your home is a sanctuary designed for your mutual pleasure and rest. But the moment a child crosses the threshold, that exclusive dynamic is destroyed. The two is permanently replaced by the three, and the entire gravitational pull of the household shifts to accommodate this beautiful, demanding, incredibly vulnerable new center. Imagine a couple who, in their early years together, were defined by their spontaneity. They were the kind of people who would stay up until dawn talking, who would leave town on a Friday evening with nothing but a single bag, whose physical connection was loud, urgent, and fiercely private. Now, fast forward a few years into parenthood. It is 9 o'clock on a Tuesday. The house is finally silent. The endless daily marathon of feeding, bathing, soothing, and organizing is paused. They collapse onto the couch, physically depleted and emotionally wrung out. They are alone, but they are not really alone. The phantom presence of the child is still in the room. They speak in hushed, careful whispers, terrified of waking the baby. Their language has completely changed. They refer to each other as mom and dad, even when no children are listening. The sensual, vibrant woman from years ago is now heavily cloaked in the sacred, culturally revered mantle of mother. The spontaneous, passionate man is now defined entirely by his role as a provider and protector. They look at each other with deep, undeniable love and immense gratitude. They are proud of the family they have built, but the sheer, heavy weight of their parental identities has completely crushed the delicate, selfish, entirely necessary spark of their erotic selves. The bedroom, once a private arena for their desires, has become a family room, a triage center for midnight fevers, a folding station for tiny clothes. The physical space of intimacy has been conquered by the endless machinery of parenting. This happens because modern society demands a level of parental sacrifice that borders on the absolute. We are taught that good parents must be completely selfless. We are told that from the moment a child is born, our own needs, our own identities, and certainly our own desires must be placed permanently on the back burner. We internalize a deep, toxic guilt at the mere thought of wanting a life or an hour or a single thought that does not revolve entirely around our offspring. We begin to believe that to desire our partner passionately, to want to lock the door, be unapologetically selfish, and focus entirely on adult pleasure is somehow a betrayal of our sacred duty to our children. But this relentless, self-sacrificing devotion is a dangerous trap, not just for the couple, but for the child as well. We falsely believe that we are giving our children the ultimate gift by making them the undisputed, continuous center of our universe. But a child does not actually want the terrifying burden of being the only thing holding their parents' lives together. A child deeply needs to know that their parents have a strong, impenetrable private bond that exists completely outside of their reach. When a child sees that their parents have a world of their own, it provides a profound sense of safety. It tells the child, "We love you completely, but we do not need you to be our entire existence. We are stable. The foundation is strong." Reclaiming your intimate life after children requires a radical, intentional act of rebellion against the all-consuming cult of modern parenthood. It requires you to do something that will initially feel deeply uncomfortable. You must forcibly draw a boundary between the family and the couple. You must grant yourselves the absolute permission to close the bedroom door, to turn the lock, and to explicitly declare that the space behind that door belongs exclusively to the adults. This is not a seamless transition. You cannot simply flip a switch and instantly transform from a hyper-vigilant caregiver back into a carefree lover. The psychological distance between wiping a high chair and surrendering to intense physical passion is immense. You have to actively build a bridge back to yourselves. This might mean leaving the house entirely. It might mean sitting in a parked car for 20 minutes before walking inside. Intentionally shedding the heavy coat of your parental identity so that you can walk through the door as an individual. When you finally allow yourselves to step out of the roles of mother and father, even for just an hour, you are not neglecting your family. You are actually performing the most vital maintenance necessary to keep the family alive. By reaching out in the dark, not as co-parents, but as a man and a woman, as two individuals with raw, entirely adult desires, you are blowing oxygen back into the very foundation that supports your children. You are remembering the essential, fiery truth that before you were a family, you were lovers, and that the survival of everything you have built depends entirely on keeping those lovers alive. Chapter 8. The Sanctuary of the Mind. Close your eyes for a moment and consider the sheer, staggering power of human imagination. We are the only creatures on Earth capable of sitting in a quiet, empty room and completely altering our own physical reality simply by closing our eyes and painting a picture in our minds. Our heart rate can double, our breathing can become shallow, our skin can flush, and our bodies can respond with intense, undeniable physical longing, all without a single real-world touch. This happens because the most powerful, complex, and highly sensitive erotic organ you possess is not located anywhere on your physical body. It is your mind. Imagine a person sitting on a crowded, brightly lit commuter train on a rainy Tuesday morning. They are wearing a damp coat, holding a tepid cup of coffee, and staring blankly at a spreadsheet on their phone. To the outside observer, they are the very picture of mundane, modern drudgery. But inside their head, an entirely different universe is unfolding. In the secret, locked sanctuary of their mind, they are not a tired commuter. They are engaged in a passionate, wildly transgressive encounter with a beautiful stranger. They are exploring a dark, thrilling scenario where all the heavy, exhausting rules of their polite, responsible life have been entirely suspended. For those 10 minutes on the train, they are dangerously, vibrantly alive. Then the train doors open. The announcement chimes. They blink, put away their phone, and step out into the cold rain, and immediately a heavy, familiar wave of guilt washes over them. We are culturally conditioned to profoundly misunderstand the nature of our own fantasies. We treat our minds like a courtroom, and we constantly put our own imaginations on trial. If we are in a deeply committed, loving relationship, and we suddenly find ourselves daydreaming about a stranger, a past lover, or a scenario that involves a completely different power dynamic than what we have at home, we panic. We instantly assume that this wandering thought is a symptom of a terrible disease. We tell ourselves that if we truly loved our partner, we would never need to close our eyes and imagine anything else. We confuse a fleeting, private image with the betrayal of our real-world vows. But this guilt is based on a fundamental misinterpretation of what a fantasy actually is. We mistakenly believe that a fantasy is a documentary, a literal instruction manual of what we secretly want to do in real life. We think that if we fantasize about being overpowered, it means we want to be hurt. We think that if we fantasize about a stranger, it means we want to leave our marriage. In reality, a fantasy is not a documentary at all. It is poetry. It is a piece of surrealist art. It is a psychological playground where our minds go to safely process emotions, fears, and desires that are completely incompatible with our waking lives. Consider the person who spends their entire waking life being the responsible anchor for their family, making every decision, carrying the emotional weight of a household, and constantly prioritizing the needs of others. If their mind conjures a deeply erotic fantasy where they are completely stripped of all control, where they are forced to surrender entirely to someone else's will, it does not mean they secretly want to be a victim. It means their exhausted psyche is using the theater of imagination to safely experience the one feeling they are denied in reality, the profound, breathtaking relief of not having to be in charge. Our fantasies are often brilliantly designed to counterbalance the heavy restrictions of our daily existence. They are the pressure valves of the human soul. The very things that make our real-life relationships beautiful and stable, safety, predictability, fairness, and deep familiarity, are the exact things that can suffocate the raw animal edge of desire. Fantasy is the mind's ingenious way of reintroducing danger, novelty, and transgression into a life that has become entirely safe. You do not have to enact a fantasy for it to be powerful. In fact, many of our most intense, beloved fantasies would be absolutely terrible, deeply uncomfortable experiences if we actually tried to bring them into the physical world. The magic of the fantasy relies entirely on the fact that it is not real. In the sanctuary of your mind, there are no consequences, there is no awkwardness, there is no risk of actual harm or emotional devastation. You are the undisputed director, writer, and star of the scene, and you can yell, "Cut," the very second it stops being enjoyable. To reclaim your erotic vitality, you must explicitly give yourself permission to own your private mind. You must stop policing your imagination. You must understand that it is entirely possible and incredibly healthy to deeply, fiercely love the person sleeping next to you, while simultaneously cultivating a wild, untamed, completely separate life behind your closed eyes. When you stop fighting your own thoughts, when you stop feeling ashamed of the strange, beautiful, and sometimes dark places your mind naturally wants to wander, you stop wasting your emotional energy on suppression. You allow the fire of your imagination to burn hot and bright. And the beautiful paradox is this: by giving yourself the freedom to mentally wander as far away from your partner as you want, you generate a massive surge of real, physical energy. You bring that newfound heat, that awakened vitality right back into the very real physical bed you share, transforming the sanctuary of your mind into a profound gift for your reality. Chapter 9. The Shadow of the Outside World. When we enter into a deeply committed relationship, we engage in a powerful, unspoken act of boundary making. We draw an invisible circle around the two of us and we stand inside it, looking out at the rest of the world. We make a silent, profound agreement. This space is uniquely ours, and the noise of the outside world is not allowed inside. We build a heavy emotional wall to protect our intimacy from the chaotic, unpredictable wilderness of other people. We desperately want to believe that by closing the gates and locking the doors, we have secured our partner entirely. We tell ourselves that because they chose us, they are now completely immune to the gravity, the temptation, and the gaze of the outside world. But this incredibly comforting belief relies on a fundamental, highly dangerous illusion, the illusion of absolute possession. Slowly, over the years, we begin to treat the person we love not as a free-roaming traveler who has consciously chosen to walk beside us, but as a permanent, immovable fixture in our own private landscape. We assume that their eyes only truly see us, that their deepest charm is reserved entirely for our living room, and that their complex magnetic energy has been successfully tamed and domesticated for our exclusive benefit. We fall asleep next to them, lulled by the certainty that the story of their life has only one remaining main character, and that character is us. But then, an entirely ordinary event shatters this comfortable illusion. Imagine you are attending a crowded, noisy social event with your partner. For a moment, the natural flow of the room separates you. You are standing near the doorway holding a drink, and you look across the sea of people. There they are. They are not looking at you. They are deeply, vibrantly engaged in a conversation with someone else, a colleague, an acquaintance, perhaps a complete stranger. You watch from a distance as they lean in, their eyes bright, a quick, effortless smile flashing across their face. You hear a sudden burst of genuine, uninhibited laughter, and in that precise, unsettling moment, you feel a sharp, electric shock reverberate through your chest. It is not necessarily full-blown jealousy, although it might contain a tiny, sharp drop of it. It is something much more profound. It is the sudden, jarring realization that your partner is an entirely separate, autonomous human being. They are a captivating, independent force in the world, and other people are naturally drawn to them. For that brief, suspended second, you are not looking at your co-manager of the household or your predictable weekend companion. You are looking at a stranger. You are seeing them through the eyes of the outside world, and inexplicably, in the wake of that slight, uncomfortable realization that you do not actually own them, a fierce, undeniable rush of desire washes over you. This is the vital, terrifying power of the outside world. We spend our entire relationships trying to permanently banish the threat of other people, the gaze of strangers, the unpredictable energy of society. We believe that true emotional security means eliminating all external threats and neutralizing any sense of competition. But desire inherently requires a slight, sharp edge of danger. It requires the deep, visceral understanding that what we have is incredibly valuable, and what is valuable can always, theoretically, be lost. When we successfully convince ourselves that our partner could never possibly exist without us, we strip them of their mystery and their power. We cannot fiercely desire something that is guaranteed to sit on the shelf forever. When we look closely at why people wander, why they sometimes seek out the dangerous, destructive thrill of a hidden transgression, it is rarely a simple, cruel rejection of their partner. Most of the time, they are not actually looking for another person. They are desperately looking for another version of themselves. They are suffocating under the heavy, predictable, responsible identity they have assumed within the partnership. The outside world offers a tantalizing blank slate. The gaze of a stranger does not know about the unpaid bills, the arguments over household chores, or the exhausted, repetitive morning routines. The stranger's gaze offers a pure, unblemished reflection of a vibrant, desirable, unbroken individual. The transgression, however damaging, is often an incredibly misguided, destructive attempt to feel the raw edge of life again. But we absolutely do not have to shatter our lives or break our vows to harness the life-giving power of the outside world. We do not have to invite betrayal to feel the spark of passion. What we must do, however, is permanently abandon the comforting, suffocating illusion of ownership. We must deliberately allow the shadow of the outside world to fall across our relationship. We must actively encourage our partners to maintain their fiercely independent lives, their separate passions, and their private friendships. We must let them dress up and go out into the world without us, and we must learn to sit with and even appreciate the slight, necessary anxiety of knowing they are out there, being brilliant and captivating entirely out of our sight. True fidelity is not a locked cage. A bird that stays in a cage simply because the door is welded shut is not loyal, it is just trapped. True fidelity is an open door. It is the breathtaking daily realization that your partner is a vibrant, deeply desirable creature who could theoretically fly anywhere in the world, who is admired by others, who feels the intense pull of the outside sky, and yet every single evening chooses to fly back and land beside you. When you embrace the shadow of the outside world, you permanently stop taking that return for granted. You look at them with the fresh, hungry eyes of someone who knows exactly how lucky they are, reigniting a fire that absolute certainty had almost entirely extinguished. Chapter 10. Reclaiming the Spark. We have traveled through the intricate, sometimes deeply contradictory landscape of human connection, dismantling the myths that have kept our passions quietly locked away. We have seen how our relentless pursuit of safety, our obsession with absolute fairness, and the crushing weight of our domestic routines can unintentionally suffocate the very fire we are trying to protect. But recognizing the heavy cage of predictability is only the first step. The ultimate question, the one that lingers in the quiet spaces of every long-term partnership, is how to actually open the door. How do we coax the wild, unpredictable energy of desire back into the room without burning down the beautiful, secure house we have spent years building? The answer lies in something we rarely associate with long-term commitment. It requires the deliberate, daily cultivation of erotic intelligence. We are culturally conditioned to believe that desire is a completely spontaneous phenomenon. We think of it like a sudden strike of lightning. In the early days of a romance, this is exactly how it feels. It is effortless, unpredictable, and entirely overwhelming. But we carry this expectation into our long-term partnerships, passively waiting for the lightning to strike again. When we are exhausted, stressed, and deeply entrenched in the machinery of a shared life, we look at the sky, waiting for a storm that simply is not coming. Erotic intelligence is the profound realization that, in a long-term partnership, you can no longer afford to wait for the lightning. You must learn how to build the fire yourself. Building this fire requires a radical shift in how we approach our intimate lives. It demands that we stop treating passion as a lucky accident and start treating it as a dedicated practice. This does not mean creating another exhausting to-do list or applying our corporate productivity mindset to the bedroom. Rather, it means creating a deliberate, protected space where the rules of the ordinary world are entirely suspended, a space specifically designed for adult play. Imagine a couple who has spent the last 5 years drowning in the beautiful, chaotic, exhausting trenches of building a life together. They are wonderful partners, but their physical connection has dwindled to a polite, predictable routine that happens right before sleep. They decide to try something completely different. They do not sit down to extensively process their feelings about their fading spark. Instead, they make a silent agreement to disrupt their geography. On a Friday evening, one partner leaves the house an hour early. They agree to meet at a dimly lit, slightly loud bar across town. They arrive separately. They do not wear their comfortable domestic clothes. They wear the armor of the outside world. When they see each other across the room, they do not immediately rush over to complain about the traffic or discuss the weekend chores. They hold the distance. They let the gaze linger. They introduce a deliberate, thrilling artificiality to the evening, perhaps even pretending for a few minutes that they are strangers striking up a conversation. By stepping entirely out of their domestic roles, by changing the physical environment and embracing the theater of the unknown, they force themselves to see each other with fresh, hungry eyes. They are actively utilizing erotic intelligence to bridge the gap between love and desire. You do not necessarily have to leave your home to create this separation. The disruption can happen entirely within the walls of your own house, provided you enforce a rigid, uncompromising boundary. It can be as simple as changing the lighting in the room, playing a specific kind of music that is never heard during the daytime, and locking the door with a loud, definitive click. That sound of the lock turning is a profound psychological trigger. It signals to both of you that the parents, the employees, and the highly responsible co-managers have been left in the hallway. For the next hour, the only people in the room are two autonomous, fiercely alive individuals who are there exclusively for each other. Reclaiming the spark also requires us to actively court risk within the safety of our commitment. We must be willing to surprise our partners, and we must be willing to let them surprise us. It means speaking a desire out loud that makes us slightly nervous. It means introducing a new physical dynamic, a different rhythm, or a completely unexpected touch. It requires the bravery to temporarily shatter the fragile, perfectly polite glass of our everyday dynamic to see what kind of vibrant energy lies underneath. Ultimately, this journey is about learning to hold a profound paradox in your hands without dropping either side. You do not have to choose between a deep, secure, trusting love and a vibrant, unpredictable, slightly dangerous passion. You are entirely capable of having both. But having both means abandoning the childish fantasy that a single relationship can be perfectly smooth and effortlessly passionate all the time. It requires you to tolerate the beautiful, necessary tension between the warmth of the hearth and the cold, thrilling wind of the outside night. When you stop demanding that your partner be an easily readable, entirely predictable extension of yourself, you give them the greatest gift of all, the gift of their own mystery. And in return, you get the opportunity to spend the rest of your life continuously rediscovering the endlessly fascinating, deeply desirable stranger who sleeps quietly right beside you.